Y'all ready to go for the next part? Let's go to the next part. Luckily, I always remember what I'm not doing. So let's read on. There is one more objection against intellectual philosophy in its wildest extent, which requires some little consideration, namely that it is entirely superseded and rendered unnecessary by revelation. Revelation, it is urged, is an authoritative view of human nature and of human destiny, and was given to perfect the otherwise imperfect knowledge we had of our position and prospects in the universe, so that to philosophize on these things is no other than to go back to the state in which mankind exists before they had access to this clearer and better light from heaven. Now, first of all, this conclusion can only have its full weight on the supposition that the objects of revelation and of speculative philosophy are all identical, or at any rate, that there is no point touched upon in the latter, which is not sufficiently elucidated in the former. This, however, we can by no means admit to be the case. That revelation has thrown a vast light upon the great problem of the world and of human destiny, we allow. But that was ever intended to give us there a complete system of philosophy, to erect an entire superstructure of human knowledge, and to leave no problem to be solved in the whole region of mental, moral, or whatever may be more strictly called metaphysical investigation, we are far from being prepared to grant. To instant first the peculiar department of psychology, who, it is asked, expects to find a complete analysis of our mental faculties and susceptibilities in the Bible. We find it is true that the working of our mental powers and faculties is described here and there in the passages of Revelation, so far at least as they have a direct bearing upon their religious feelings. It is true, also, that we see pointed out for practical use or caution the passions and desires which are most likely to become dangerous or excessive. In addition to this, some few conclusions perhaps might be drawn from the distinction that is there made between the soul and the spirit, the animal man and the spiritual man. These, however, are far from being placed before us in a scientific form. Neither are they by any means intended to furnish a full account of our mental constitution. They are given simply for practical use, and accordingly leave open a large field of scientific investigation, from which many valuable results may be drawn by any mind that can apply it to acute powers of analysis and research, or to adduce still further the department of morals. That a practical morality of the most elevated character runs through the whole of the Scriptures, and peculiarly through those in the New Testament, no one can fail to admit. But as these writings were intended for popular use, to come down to the habits of thinking common in all ages amongst the mass of mankind, we could not naturally expect to find there the speculative question of morals either mooted or solved. As far as our practical necessities go, the morals of the Scriptures are absolutely perfect, and furnish an idea of what the purity of our nature ought to be, which can be derived from no other source whatever. But it was neither intended that all efforts of man's intellect on these points should be completely contravened and repressed as by a voice from heaven, telling us that they could no longer be of any service, or answer any useful end. The speculative question in morals, which are left untouched in the Scriptures, are amongst the most interesting and important to which the human mind can be directed. The inquiry, for example, in what conscience essentially consists, whether it be a moral sense implanted in us, or whether it be a moral judgment, or whether it be the result of our natural sympathies, or whether it be the cementing of all our feelings and faculties together into one great regulating principle, gives rise to an investigation which leads us to examine the very groundwork of our moral constitution. the inquiry, again, as to what virtue is, objectively considered, whether it arises from the eternal fitnesses of things, or from utility, or from benevolence, or whether its ground is to be found only in the will of God, presents to us another point where there is scope for the most acute and valuable philosophical research. I fucking hate that word, by the way. And if it be asked why we should take the pains to search into these speculative questions of morality, when the practical side is given us in perfection in the Scriptures, we answer that the intellect of man ever struggles after satisfaction, as well as his moral and religious nature, and that, while the latter can be completely supplied from the Scriptures, the former must seek the ground of its satisfaction, and combine its materials into a complete superstructure of knowledge, by means of unwearied and laborious thinking. On these points, and on many others, such as those respecting human liberty and necessity, respecting the doctrine of providence in connection with the subsistence of the material world, respecting our physical condition here, as influence the mind, and respecting the physical theories of another life, there is room for many investigations which are hardly mentioned, not to say exhausted, in the pages of Revelation. But we go a step further in answering to the objection that Revelation renders philosophical thinking unnecessary, and affirm that the authority of Revelation itself must to a considerable extent rest upon it. All religion reposes upon the idea of God as its foundation. Without this idea, Revelation itself has no weight, inasmuch as its authority is solely derived from the fact of its coming from God. Pause real quick. Fuck you for making things stupid for no goddamn reason. Right there. Solely derived from the fact. No. Derivatable. Fuck you. Anyway. The being of a God, therefore, is a truth that must to a certain degree be impressed upon us before we open the very first page of inspiration. Nay, its very first proposition would be unintelligible without it. I love the nay part. In the beginning, says Moses, God created the heavens and the earth. But who is God? And where is the evidence of his existence? I feel like it's everywhere. All these must be settled points before the Scriptures can be use to us in the slightest authority, and they cannot be settled once started, without deep inward reflection upon nature and upon man as its interpreter. But perhaps we shall be reminded that the Scriptures carry with them their own evidence of divine existence, the evidence, namely, of miracles openly performed and well authenticated. True, to a certain extent they do, but to an extent which can by no means dispense with the other evidence we have mentioned. For first of all, the argument from miracles, to whatsoever extent it may be valid, must be interpreted and enforced by the light of our reason. And secondly, its validity, as far as it bears upon the divine existence, can even then only be of very secondary character. For what mind is there that would be convinced of the being of a God? That's a weird way to say that. Of the being of a God. From the witnessing of some temporal change in the laws of nature, when it had totally failed of gaining such conviction for the perpetual and standing wonder of creation itself. Assuredly, if nature in her most beauteous form and most striking operations were insufficient to lead our minds to the conception of an efficient creator, none of what would be then her freaks and wanderings would do so. Nay, when we speak of the evidence of miracles as testifying of the hand of God, that evidence, if I mistake not, derives all its strength from the previous confidence we have in the existence of an almighty power. The framer of laws of nature, as we see them usually in operation, and which laws we argue could not be changed by a power less than that, which first called them into being. If chance or fate or any other blind impulse could create the world and fix its laws, it has likewise power to alter them. And if therefore our reflection upon the constitution of things around us as they are, and the application to them of the great law of causation, is not sufficient to lead us to the conviction of an intelligent cause from which they sprang, neither would a perpetual series of miracles be able to do so. Miracles, indeed, we never intended to convince any one of the existence of God, and it is not but a misapplication of them to use them for this purpose. They were merely intended to convince us that this being, of whose existence we have previously and higher... See, that's a stupid sentence. We have previous and higher evidence, operates in some particular manner, or through some particular medium, through it. All revealed religion accordingly rests upon the pedestal of natural religion. All natural religion, again, rests upon the existence of a God, and the certainty of his existence must be derived from the relation of the laws of nature to those of the human mind. If these laws be not established, natural religion fails of a foundation. And if the foundation of nature religion sinks, the whole authority of revealed religion sinks with it to a non-entity. Revelation, therefore, so far from putting a cheek upon philosophical investigation in reference to these topics, renders it, in fact, only so much the more necessary, and so much more valuable in the proportion and the superstructure which by the aid of revelation we build upon it, becomes to us the deeper importance. Motherfuck. One more thought we throw upon this objection, namely, that philosophy, by investigating upon natural grounds the state and tendency of human nature, often renders a very essential service to the evidence of revelation. Revelation brings to us a vast number of facts, which it commends to our reception on the ground of testimony and authority. Now, it is clear that if any of these facts, which come to us primarily upon testimony and authority, can be verified by philosophy, they will carry with them a double evidence, and come home to us with a double weight. Men who have thought most deeply upon the evidence of revelation have ever felt how valuable it was the ascension of strength they attained, wherever scientific investigation could be made to bear upon them. How many, for example, have attempted, we say, not how successfully, to elicit a verification of the Mosaic, deluge, and cosmogony from the discoveries of geology? In how many instances have we been called upon to hail some fresh light, which, I don't know what that word is, psychology? What the fuck word is that? This one's pausing me because it's psychology. Psychology has succeeded in throwing upon the scriptural account of the origin of the human family. And on the same principle, what believer in Revelation does not rejoice to see the scriptural representation of man's mental and spiritual condition borne out by close and accurate research into the nature and tendencies of the human mind? The greater be the number of the facts of Revelation which we can show to the rest upon the basis of science as well as authority, the better it is for us, both as regards the strength of their evidence and the character of their influence. Philosophy, by carrying certainly with it to a given length, and pointing out real difficulties where that certainly ends, is ever mild in its features and tolerant in its tone. On the other hand, the more implicitly we bow to authority, the less tolerant we become to those who choose not to bow as obediently as ourselves. The mind always seizes with a kind of convulsion, grasps those truths for which it can give no very satisfactory account, as though the tenacity with which they are held would go to make up the deficiency in their evidence. And on this ground it is that those who are most ignorant, to prevent the appearance of absurdity, commonly find it necessary to be most dogmatical. On the other hand, an abundance of knowledge and a strength of evidence, as they define more clearly the bounds of the known and the unknown, tend perpetually towards toleration, a fact which should make every ray of fresh light that is cast from any quarter upon religious truth, or of additional value to us. There are many facts, moreover, brought before our attention by revelation, which, if they cannot be reduced to a philosophical form, and be shown to rest upon a scientific basis, are yet rendered intensely probable by an analogy. They may be seen to bear to the ascertained laws of nature, or of our own constitution. The analogies of the natural world, for example, in many respects point us to the fact of soul's immortality. And still more strikingly do the elements of our own moral constitution point us to a perfect moral government, where the idea of human accountability shall find its ultimate completion. In all such cases as these, which the reader may see admirably handled in the immortal work of Bishop Butler, intellectual philosophy appears as the handmaid of revelation, not only aiding in making firm the foundation on which it rests, but by its results illustrating and confirming many of the most important truths which come to us on the authority of a divine inspiration. That was like... I just want to say this real quick, and I just want to get it out of the way. And I'm not trying to be an asshole, okay? But fucking, like, fuck this. You know what I mean? I just think it's like... Oh, look at that. The book cover broke off. Good, because that's how much it sucked. But I can fix this. I just don't want to right now. I think it's like so fucking ignorant. Yeah, that's an easy fix. Just take the spine off. Weird how it took some pages with it. How did this all happen? Oh, just had to put that in the pile of books to fix. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is a hard fucking read. It feels so smug, and it's the way it talks sometimes, and it uses these words a little bit smart, you know. It feels arrogant to me, but maybe that's just the times. I don't know. Maybe that's just like, well, you know, that's how they... I get people spoke differently at different times in our world, and I get how the English speak opposed to the Americans. I also get intellectual levels of speech and stuff like that. Me, I'm coming from a lower class, an American modern, you know, family. So this shit wasn't something that I ever like was exposed to. Especially this, like, fucking what I'm reading now. I've never read anything like that in my entire life. Okay, and I know we're going through this fucking series and shit, but this is a tough read because I shouldn't be going behind the scenes too much, but goddamn, dude. What did I get from that? Personally, religion has its merits, you know, and we're not trying to approach it in a way to take away from it. You know what I mean? You don't have to prove so fucking much. Just say that, and then we can move on. But that's what it felt like. It just felt like we're dancing around the idea of, like, what is revelation? What is divinity? What is a God? And all these questions, and what is in the Bible, and that is special, and blah, blah, blah. But we don't seek to, like, that has its own merits, and it has a perfection, but we understand that humans aren't perfect, so we're trying to find the idea of what we are inside of this, and, you know, maybe that's not what it meant, but that's what I got from it, because it's kind of hard to read out loud and retain. I have to listen back. But it's insane that this is only the fucking introduction. Like, this is a lot. This is a fucking lot to, like, process in my mind. Oh. What a lot. What a quite a bit. I would love to be able to read, you know, maybe A Hero with a Thousand Faces and and just read, this tale of indulgent parenthood illustrates the antique idea that when the roles of life are... I love to read stuff like this. I love to read historical things out loud. But we've committed, and we have to continue on. Nobody, you know, I don't think anyone's watching. I don't blame you if you're not watching this. Just saying. I have to just continue on because I have to fucking continue on. You know, it's not like I want to, but I've started. This is gonna probably take a long time. Why am I doing this? I don't know. I don't goddamn know. Your grandma does, though. And she was texting me, and I was like, what do you mean? Until next time, I guess, we'll just pick up from there. I recommend every fucking listen. I recommend going back to the first one and just going through it, personally. How are you going to remember all this? Especially when I can't do it every single day. So yeah, just go back, listen to them, and we'll continue on. It's okay if you don't get this. I think it's so stupid and ignorant to say like, oh, you don't understand this, peasant? Like, no, it's okay. Like, I don't get it either. It's fucking like, well, I get it, but I don't get it. Like, I feel like I'm missing things, but I do feel like I'm kind of like following along a bit. So I don't feel overwhelmed lost. I just kind of, pretentiousness fucking pisses me off. It always does. It's always annoying when people are like, well, you know, then, and they use these words and shit and the way they describe it, and, you know, they feel like they're trying to be impressive. And I guess that always makes me just like say, fuck this. So that's my bias. But when I get past it, I do kind of see what they're saying. To me, it seems like I said, religion does have its merits, but we can't necessarily stick with it totally, you know, because that imbues an idea of perfection that we'll never understand. And if we go back to what we think philosophy is, it's seeking to understand the world around us because of our senses and because of the way we view it all. Well, how can we do that when we consider this divinity and don't answer? Okay, so this divinity doesn't answer any questions. It merely says it's this perfect thing. We're not saying that religion isn't real. We're moving from it and trying to find other answers away from this, though it does have its merits. That's what I'm thinking it's saying. I don't know. I could be fucking way off on it, but that's what I'm that's what I'm thinking. Again, I'll have to re-listen to it and see, because it's hard to, for me at least, it's hard to personally retain things if I'm reading it out loud and trying to focus on not fucking up some of these words. And one more time, I just want to say, fuck some of the way they word some of that shit. It's almost pretentious on purpose. It's disgusting. But anyway, till the next one.